We're talking a lot about Trump's accomplishments throughout the first year, but I want to look at a little bit ahead to what I'm anticipating will happen this year. I think this will be the year that we acquire Greenland. It came up yesterday. Marco Rubio and Trump were talking about it. This is a clip I want to share with you. Cut 10, please.
He felt very strongly we need it for national. We need Greenland for national security, not for minerals. We have so many sites for minerals and oil and everything. We have more oil than any other country in the world. We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need it for national security. We have to have it. And he wanted to lead the charge, so we're making him, Marco today, a special envoy to Greenland.
So remember, don't take him literally, take him seriously, though. The minerals do matter. But when he's talking about Russian and Chinese ships going all across the Greenland coast, why are they there? They're there for strategic purposes. That is a vantage point, gets them North Atlantic vantage point, Arctic, Europe. Do you trust Europe? Do you trust NATO? I don't. Very interesting conversation I had with Dr. Gorka on a podcast that is on my feed from last week, where I asked him specifically, are our efforts to try to get Greenland a way to sort of circumvent NATO, supersede NATO? And he said, no, NATO is going to become stronger. I don't know if I buy that, but what's really interesting is that the administration is on guard on that point because they want to bring around these NATO allies. Tomorrow, Trump will be at Davos. He'll be giving a big address. I'll break it all that down. There'll likely be Thursday's show. I'll play clips for you, what I think are the highlights and what he's really saying. But he's going to be going there, and I think he's going to be making the case why America needs Greenland, why we are better positioned to be in charge of Greenland, why that could benefit the globe. So all that's to come. It's going to be a major initiative and might kick off President Trump's second year. So what I want to talk about a little bit, though, is the threat of what we're going up against. And I mentioned Michelle Obama, for example, in the last segment. I got a cut of her podcasting as usual. Let's play cut 9.
If I hear of someone whose fashion that I like and I know that they're a person of color, I try to make it a point. But the clothes have to be available. You know, I think we can all do some work to think about that balance in our wardrobes. You know, what does our closet look like and who's in it? Mm-hmm. Who are we supporting in it?
Right.
You know, and I think if you have the money to buy Chanel, mm-hmm. then you have the money to buy everybody.
Right.
And so let us be mindful, I think would be my advice.
Yeah.
So you should be mindful specifically of white-owned businesses, which is really interesting because a lot of the biggest clothing companies, people have shares in them, they're publicly traded, and you actually have the ability to raise all boats because a lot of people who are not white are going to have shares of those companies. But she's basically suggesting that people who you need to evaluate, of course, the politics, but also maybe even the ethnicity because favoring people who are minority owners. All of this is this light racism that's so condescending. This is DEI taken to another extended level where we're prioritizing what divides us, where we're different, instead of all working in unity as a country. And that's part of what the left does not appreciate, they don't like, is that in the United States, we have a culture, we have, of course, an economy, we have a set shared values. And these values have been the greatest that we've seen for any nation state on earth, at least in modern times. No one wants to trade places. She's not going to go move somewhere else. If she did, she wouldn't be happy. And probably her top places wouldn't have a lot of black people in them. I'm just guessing. A lot of the left, they like to move to very wide areas. That's where they tend to move. So that is the type of attitude that could have been leading our country. Just the DEI obsession, the race obsession. People like Don Lemon would be in charge. Don Lemon from CNN fame. I played yesterday him storming a Minneapolis church, which is clear violation of the FACE Act, which means you're allowed to worship without being obstructed by protesters. He's claiming he's being a journalist, but you can't actually run into a church service and interrupt the church service because that's an infringement on their First Amendment rights. So you have the right as the press to be able to ask questions, but there's a limit to it in the sense that you're supposed to stay at the curb. You're supposed to hang out, wait till people come out, and then you can ask them questions. But you're not really supposed to go into the church. That's exactly what he did. And he knew that he was going to be with protesters who were going to disrupt the service because apparently the pastor of the church has a connection to ICE. So he doubled down on what we played yesterday, saying this is great. Let's play cut 3, please.
The protest is fundamental to American society. This country started in a protest, and it's freedom of expression. People have a right to lift up their voices and make their peace, and none of us are immune from the voice of the public.
So that was Keith Ellison right there, or was that Limon? So anyway, the Limon was saying they're trying to turn me as a journalist into an activist, and I'm not, but he obviously is. Did I call for the wrong cut? And so Keith Ellison, who's the Attorney General of Minnesota, he was on a podcast, as you can see on this feed there, with Don Lemon, and they're talking about how it's actually ICE that's the problem and not the protesters that are interrupting church services. None of us are immune from the voice of the public, meaning the public is allowed to storm church services. That's the point where they've gotten. That's their priorities, making sure that protesters on the left that are pro-ICE, which means pro-Somali fraudsters. There's a viral clip going around on all these ICE protesters that are interfering with ICE, who was trying to arrest a child sex trafficker. And so those are the people that they're rounding up. The vast majority of people that ICE is detaining have criminal records beyond being illegal aliens. That's what they're targeting. So I said this over and over again. They're not coming in this studio. They're not targeting me and Sean. They're targeting people who are criminal fraudsters or are people who are engaged in illicit, illegal behavior. That's the crackdown. And why the left is freaking out is because we're exposing what they're doing all over the country in order to buy votes. And here's the conversation that we're seeing on cable news. This is Jennifer Welch, who is a very popular podcaster these days on the left. I want to play this clip for you.
Well, I can certainly understand their frustration with that, because all of the grifting through Christianity and overt patriotism, and then these people can't call out the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia ring. It's very alarming.
Yeah, so it's all trying to bring up Epstein wherever they can. That's the move, try to pivot to Epstein. And we should be aware of this, too, because the Trump administration doesn't satisfy some people in their base about Epstein releases. It could fracture the coalition, so it's important to note that. But she's got Don Lemon on, touting Lemon, and saying there's grifting in Christianity, which sure there is to some degree, but that's not really the subject here. The subject here is Somali fraudsters that are obviously grifting the country. And overt patriotism now using the grift. Like, that's their preoccupation. It's not the fraud. You know, I really want to play Jennifer Welch's interview with one of the parents whose child lost their child care because ISIS cracked down on the fake Somali fraudster fraud ring where there were alleged child care centers that don't exist. The problem is that interview will never exist because there aren't any parents that lost the child care. That's the whole point. So isn't that silence deafening here? Shouldn't we see all the parents flooding the streets saying, hey, we lost our child care. There's nothing we can do. Isn't there one compelling person who could say, hey, I was using the Leering Center and for my kids, and now I can't use the Leering Center anymore. All right. There's an interesting exchange with my friend Scott Jennings on CNN with a guy named Cameron Kasky, who takes issue with Scott using the word illegals. Let's play cut 6, please.
You don't get to say the word illegals anymore.
But you have.
The percentage.
Who are you to tell me what I can and can't say? I've never met you, brother. Listen, I can say whatever I want. If they're illegal aliens, and that's what the law calls them, illegal aliens, that's what I'm going to call them. Right.
Listen, you can't say illegals anymore because ICE is directly targeting legal citizens of this country. And how
are you going to enforce your edict on me, just out of curiosity?
Listen, I understand.
But just listen to his point about illegals.
No, I want to know why he gets to instruct
You're
my
changing the
students.
topic.
Hang on.
I want to know.
I met Cameron Kasky. So Cameron Kasky is one of these kids who's unfortunate circumstances that he was one of the survivors of the Parkland school shooting. And a lot of these kids, a lot of them are very smart, and they're trying to use that tragedy that they faced and to try to make something of their lives. But some of them direct it, and I think the wrong ways. And he's now running for Congress. And I got to say, I don't like to name call, but this kid is a dummy. He is not a bright person. He's like 25 years old. And for him to look at the landscape of all that's ailing this country, he thinks the problem is Scott Jennings using the word illegals, when it is illegals he's targeting. So the language police stuff, that has got to go. We are not into it anymore as a society. And to have twerps who just decided that they should be in charge of something, never had a real job in his life, has some social media followers, so I think I'll run for Congress. And how is he going to enforce that? We're not saying the word illegals. We're a country that values free speech quite a bit. One of the top priorities we've got. The conversation on CNN somehow got even more ridiculous. Let's play cut 1, please.
They crossed the line when they went inside a church. And I think of it almost like, a church is public property. Imagine if protesters went inside a hospital to protest Medicaid or health policy and interrupted treatment of patients.
Okay, pause.
It's really not that
this
different.
Is a great point. There's a great point by Stacey Schneider, who's not a right-wing person. She's a liberal person. And she's saying from a legal standpoint, what Don Lemon was doing was probably wrong. Let's continue.
And interrupted treatment of patients. It's really not that different.
But ICE officers do that. ICE officers have been going into hospitals. They have been going into churches. Donald Trump said they were allowed to go into churches. They're going to schools. They're picking out parents from drive-by lines. And these people in the neighborhood.
So that's Lee McGowan, who's a popular leftist podcaster. And she's equating going into churches to picking up people from the state-sponsored schools where the government is paying for illegal alien fraudsters to get their kids educated in the school. Do you see the difference? In the First Amendment, we have a freedom of religion in this country, but we don't have a freedom necessarily to just take advantage of America's largesse by getting your illegal alien children educated in our public schools without us asking you a couple of questions about it. Now, we do educate the illegal alien kids, but I'll tell you, it's not the same as going into a church to find known fraudsters in a line to drop off children. Not the same as freedom of religion.